So the newest episode of The Boys is here, so let's just get right into it. Because today we're talking The Boys, Season 5, Episode 3, breakdown and review. But before we get into anything, guys, please, for me, like this video, subscribe to the page, and hit that noti bell. Alright, The Boys, Season 5, Episode 3, getting right into some of the things that I absolutely loved. The opening of this episode was absolutely awesome. That whole sequence of Ryan just taking down multiple different soldiers, it really felt somewhat like a horror film where all you could see was them being dragged off, carried away, and then at the end, the last soldier is remaining, and he comes face to face with Ryan, and in this moment, he actually asks Ryan to spare him, and Ryan just very coldly says, "I can't do that. I cannot let anyone know that I was here," and then he activates his laser vision and absolutely destroys that person, and then we do go to another sequence brought to us from Vought, exonerating Soldier Boy of everything that he was accused of, and they essentially just blamed Starlight for everything. However, the thing that I found most interesting about this scene in particular was actually Homelander's reaction to everything that was happening. Homelander seeing everyone praise Soldier Boy, and this got under Homelander's skin to the point where he interrupts the interview and makes it about himself and proclaims to the world that he is in fact Soldier Boy's son. And in this moment, I like how it flashes to Sister Sage as well, and she is just saying, "No, don't do this is not a good choice," and Homelander absolutely does not listen to that, and then he does go on and on about how his father is Soldier Boy, so they are essentially a family of soups. And this just goes even more into the character of Homelander and how he can't let anyone else have his spotlight. This is exactly what happened with Ryan. Anytime they were talking about Ryan being the chosen one and Ryan being the first ever natural born soup, he wanted to make it about himself. So once again, now with Soldier Boy, he is doing the exact same thing. Everything always has to revolve around Homelander. That's the type of person he is. And now the fact that Soldier Boy was able to survive this soup killing virus, that actually is making things even worse for Homelander. And Homelander even says, "Well, I'm his son, so aren't I immune to this virus as well?" And once it's pointed out that Homelander is not immune and only Soldier Boy and a few other people are actually immune to this virus because they had V1, they are practically immortal. Homelander absolutely loses his mind to the point where he sees Madeline Stillwell as an angel, and she starts talking about how he's meant to baptize everyone and save the world, and even comparing him to Jesus, which we've seen him do multiple times in the past. However, this is just driving home how absolutely insane Homelander is getting. Some of the other things that I really liked about this episode was every single interaction we get from Homelander and Soldier Boy. From their first interaction after Soldier Boy survived the virus, and he basically tells Homelander to F off, and Homelander tries to reason with him and tries to lie to him and say, "I didn't know it was going to happen to you," but Soldier Boy sees right through this instantly and calls him out. However, not only does he call him out, he actually looks at him and makes it clear that he still thinks he's pathetic, he still thinks he is a worthless person, and he even says that Homelander is going to keep getting older and older to the point where he's going to be in a wheelchair, and at that point, he's going to have to watch as Soldier Boy is the leader of the Seven because he is immortal and Homelander is not. So this just furthers why Homelander wants V1 so bad, because he can't stand the thought of anyone being immortal other than him. Everything always needs to revolve around him, as I mentioned a little bit earlier. Homelander's entire character is needing to be the center of attention. Vought quite literally made a big part of his psyche, needing and craving the attention of others. So this desire to be immortal, just like Soldier Boy, actually drives a lot of the plot of this episode. He is now looking for V1. Anyone who has any information about V1, Homelander absolutely needs to get his hands on them. So that is why we once again see Stan Edgar. However, the boys are able to get to him first, so they do start to go through all of the old files, trying to look for anything that is related to V1. Unfortunately, they realistically can't find anything except for one military base that was extremely classified, so they are presuming that V1 is going to be held at this facility, so that is where they are going to go. However, before they can do that, Noir, the Deep, and two other soups do arrive there, and although they had a pretty sound plan, which was getting Translucent's son to deploy knockout gas to knock everybody out, he is caught by one of the soups who has super smelling, and in this moment, the Deep doesn't kill him right away and instead talks to him, and after talking with the Deep, the son of Translucent absolutely changes his mind on everything because he realizes the boys were actually the ones who were responsible for his dad's death. So we then get a fight sequence difference between the boys and some of these soups. However, it's not the Deep or Black Noir, it's the other two who I can't remember either of their names. I believe one of their names is Cindy. However, I might be wrong about that, but either way, it doesn't really matter because both of these soups are taken out. One actually gets her neck broken by Starlight because Starlight thinks that she sees Huey get killed. However, it was actually just Translucent's son that was in front of Huey. So this was a little bit of death baiting. However, I also think it was hinting at the fact that Huey is going to survive throughout all of this because we got to see how devastated Annie would be. So if we once again actually get the death of Huey, I feel like it would just be recycling an emotion we've already seen. So that's why now Huey is definitely my number one most likely to survive throughout this series. However, since we're talking about characters surviving, someone that I do not think is going to survive this season is Billy Butcher. We see Butcher once again reunited with Ryan. They start talking about Homelander, talking about what Homelander did, and more importantly, talking about Ryan taking out Homelander. He has tremendous reservations, and then Butcher quite literally tells him that he is the closest thing to a child of destiny that there's ever been, and they actually have a way to take out Homelander. All he would need to do is release this virus after contacting Homelander, and Ryan in this moment just asks, well, what would happen to me after I call him there and I release this virus? Would I die too? And Butcher just says, yes, you would die too. However, I would be right there and we would all go out together. And in this moment, very understandably so, Ryan is very shocked and overwhelmed by all of this. He even quite literally states, so you're basically asking me to kill myself in this moment. And Butcher even says, soldiers die all the time for causes. However, this would be the first time that someone would die and it would lead to saving the entire world. And that line really hit heavy, not only for the audience, but also for Ryan too, because Ryan decides to do it. He agrees they are going to work together. However, before they are able to do that, they go back to their lair and discover that Kimiko and Frenchie let Samir go, who was creating the virus. And before he left, he destroyed every single trace of the virus. So in this moment, you can see Butcher was about to kill Kimiko. However, he still needs Frenchie. So when Frenchie threatens him and says, if you do anything to her, I am not helping you at all, Butcher does back off. However, in this moment, he tells Ryan, we can't do it anymore. You are not strong enough. You're just a kid. Once again, pushing Ryan away, and Ryan then leaves. Then one of the other things that I absolutely loved in this episode was another interaction between Soldier Boy and Homelander, when Homelander calls Soldier Boy into his bathroom, and instantly Soldier Boy says, what the F are you doing? Is that breast milk? And yes, it is indeed Homelander bathing in breast milk. And he stands up fully naked, talking to Soldier Boy, trying to get him on his side once again. And he even says, you're my father. That's why I want you to have a seat at the table. And he also tries to talk down to Soldier Boy and tell him how pathetic Soldier Boy actually is. But all Soldier Boy really does is comment on the fact that Homelander is going gray in other places other than the hair on his head. And then he does end up leaving. And after Soldier Boy leaves, we see Homelander go back into the tub and he decides he's going to drink some of the milk that he's been bathing in. Absolutely disgusting, but hey, it's Homelander, so that is to be expected, especially by this point. However, since we were talking about breast milk, we cannot forget the scene with Firecracker, the person who was artificially making herself be able to produce breast milk just for Homelander. However, she has become pretty useless to him since she can no longer do that due to health reasons. But this episode, that did not stop her from getting with his dad. And in the moment when Soldier Boy and Firecracker actually met, you could tell right away that they were going to have some type of chemistry. They start talking about different guns, comparing their guns, and then very quickly we flash to a scene where they are in bed together, clearly having sex, and Soldier Boy starts to ask if she was ever with Homelander in that way, and she notes that they never did anything like that. It was more of her being a mother figure to him, and he just comments on how weird that is and how weird Homelander is, and he admits that he realistically only did this to try and piss Homelander off, which is a really funny move on his part, especially considering there is a big possibility that Stormfront is actually Homelander's mom, so there is a chance that some wonky stuff went on and Homelander ended up being intimate with Soldier Boy's ex as well. So a lot of that going around between the Soups family there. However, since we're talking about the Soups family, we cannot forget to talk about one of the best scenes in this entire episode, and that is without a doubt when Ryan goes to confront Homelander. They have that talk, and Homelander Homelander assumes that Ryan is there to apologize and ask for forgiveness, so he starts telling him that everything is okay. He doesn't need to feel the pressure anymore. Ryan has nothing to worry about. Homelander will be alive forever, so his legacy will be preserved by himself. And this just furthers what is truly wrong with Homelander. Everything needs to be about him. He can't even pass it on to his son. And even when he first sees his son, the first thing he thinks to do is tell him that Homelander's already forgiven him and that the legacy will be kept on by himself. That just shows how absolutely insane this person is. But Ryan disregards pretty much all of that and outright asks Homelander about what happened with his mom. Homelander obviously denies it. And one of the things I absolutely loved about this scene is we see Ryan actually using his powers, and he says, "Your heart rate is going up. You're clearly lying." And as Homelander continues to try to deny this, Ryan just does not believe it. And then we do get Ryan versus Homelander. They have a decent fight between father and son. And another thing I really liked about this sequence was that at first, Homelander wasn't trying to hurt Ryan. Homelander, multiple times after getting hit, after getting lasered, tried to reason with his son, showing the audience that Homelander, even though he is a psychopath, still has a shred of humanity, and that humanity is tied to his father and tied to his son. Those are the only two people in the world that could do something to Homelander and he wouldn't outright kill them instantly. He was giving both of them a chance. However, after this chance is squandered by Ryan, and Ryan still tries to keep fighting, he hits Homelander one too many times, and then Homelander absolutely snaps, beats the hell out of Ryan to the point where the audience does think Ryan is dead. However, it is revealed at the end of the episode when Butcher goes to see Ryan that Ryan is still alive. So this to me is also really interesting because they're clearly leaving Ryan alive for some type of reason. I think they are going to dive deeper into the whole child of prophecy thing that has been mentioned in this episode and in episodes past. So to me, this actually could be another way that Homelander is ultimately defeated. Maybe Ryan gets the V1 and he's the one to take down Homelander. But before the episode ends, the Deep comes in and he arrived with Stan Edgar. So he was the one who successfully completed Homelander's mission. However, he was only able to do this because he decided to betray Noir after they captured Stan Edgar, and deploys the knockout gas in that Cybertruck they were driving around in to knock out Noir, throw him out of the car, and even says, "Sorry bro, I have to look out for myself," leaves, and then that's when we see he arrives and shows Homelander that he indeed succeeded. And in this moment we get a reunion between Stan Edgar and Homelander, and you can see there is some fear on Stan Edgar's face, and Homelander just simply hugs him and says, "We have a lot to talk about." And man, oh man, I am so excited for next week's episode. I have no idea where this is going to go. I feel like Stan Edgar is also a character that has a really good chance to survive in this season, and I also now think that Ryan is going to survive as well. But I'm interested to hear from all of you. What did you think of the episode? Did you think Ryan was going to die? And now, who do you think is most likely to survive to the end of this series? Let me know in the comments below. And while you guys are down there, please, for me, like this video, subscribe to the page, and hit that noti bell. And I'll see all of you in the next video. Goodbye.